That's a great question. I grew up with a sister with Down syndrome, and I have a son with autism. And so this has been a part of my story my whole life. I've been in a special needs disability family for since the day I was born, since my sister with Down syndrome is older. And so I have lots of different experiences that have taught me a lot about how different this big term of disability can look for every individual that has a diagnosis. And so when we're talking about the population of disability families, special needs families, the recent census said that 1 in 5 families in the US has a family member with a disability. Now, that ranges from autism to Alzheimer's. That's so many different stories and so many different experiences, but that gives us an idea of the scope. And if we are looking in our sanctuaries and in our children's ministry and our student ministry, and we're not seeing that number represented, then there's reasons for that. There's barriers that exist that are keeping them from accessing our churches. So one thing I did is I called our school district and I said, how many kids do you have in the school district that are under IEP and 504 plans? That's the way that school districts talk about the accommodations that need to be made. And at our school district, it's almost 24%. And so we should see that number reflected in our children's ministry and in our youth ministry. Now, those IEP and 504 kids, the kids that fall under those designations, we can kind of put them into different categories. So we can think of what we traditionally think of as special needs or disabilities, and that could be Down syndrome, like my sister, that can be autism, like my son, that can be cerebral palsy, that can be blindness or deafness. There's all kinds of diagnoses that we generally consider when we're talking about disability. We also have another category, and that's learning disabilities. So my older son has dyslexia, and that changes what he's able to do at church. So there's dyslexia and dysgraphia, and there's learning disabilities that can need to be accommodated in church settings. And then there's also behavioral diagnosis, and those can be ADHD, that can be oppositional defiant disorder, that can be kids with traumatic backgrounds that affect their ability to trust who's in charge in these environments. So disability is this big word that can mean 1,000 different experiences, but it's really about getting to know each person individually, figuring out what their needs are, and then figuring out how the church can meet those needs. Sometimes that means we're making some changes to the sensory environment. Sometimes that means we're changing the curriculum that we're teaching in our children's ministry or teenage ministry classes so that they hear, understand, and are able to respond to the gospel. So this idea of accessibility is really just taking down barriers that keep people from being able to participate in our churches and making a way for that to be much easier for them.